Number 1.
If someone you love has gone missing, it's never a good sign when their vehicle is found abandoned and burned. Nevertheless, loved ones of Latrice Armstead have held out hope that one day she will return home. On the day of her disappearance in July of 2012, Latrice is said to have been seen by witnesses twice with her estranged husband, Tony Bledsoe. The couple was separated and in the process of a divorce. Their relationship was riddled with domestic violence, and not long before she vanished, Bledsoe hit Latrice so hard he broke her jaw. When she disappeared, she still had her jaw wired shut from the incident. Frederick Armstead, Latrice's younger brother, told police just a few weeks before she went missing, Latrice stopped by his shop for a quick visit and was never seen or heard from again. The 38-year-old was in the midst of planning a move from Memphis, Tennessee, where she was living with her estranged husband, to St. Louis, Missouri, where she had family support. She vanished before that transition. Her family said she has no history of leaving without keeping in contact with relatives, especially her 3 young sons who are struggling with not having their mother with them. She had recently traveled to St. Louis to visit relatives and only returned to Memphis to pick up her youngest son. The baby boy really misses her because him and his mom, they were real close, Frederick told Action News 5 back in 2014. So you know, he is always like, "Where is my mom?" And they keep telling him that she's working. 3 days after she was last seen, Latrice's vehicle, a black Acura TL, was found abandoned and burned in a rural area in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Though it was in another state, Clarksdale is just about an hour away from Memphis. Latrice is a native of Crenshaw, Mississippi. "It's really hard from day to day just trying to cope and just not knowing," Brenda Armstead, Latrice's sister, said. "She is a very dedicated mother, which is why we raised the alarm immediately a few hours after her disappearance, because she usually calls and checks on her kids." Obviously, police focused on Latrice's estranged husband as a suspect in her missing person case. Bledsoe denied having any knowledge of Latrice's whereabouts. Yet, police still arrested him after his wife's disappearance because Latrice had an order of protection against Bledsoe. Because witnesses placed to the 2 parties together on the day of Latrice's disappearance, he was in violation of that order. He's always been a working man. Got cars for sale. Little things like that. I haven't ever known anything domestic or nothing with Tony Bledsoe. I ain't never known it. It kind of shocked me too," said Michael Cole, a family friend told News Channel 3 in Memphis. "It has been 4 years at the time of this publication, and there has been no new information about where Latrice Armstead is located. Not only is she a diabetic, but she required a special diet due to her jaw being wired shut." At the time of her disappearance, Latrice was approximately 5 feet 4 inches tall and 150 pounds. She has black dark brown hair and brown eyes. She also had a gold tooth on right lateral incisor and multiple tattoos that include 3 bears on her left shoulder blade, a rosary around her left arm, a blue rose on her right arm, a panther on her leg, and a heart on her left breast. Latrice has deep-set dimples in her cheeks that are strikingly noticeable. She also goes by the name Shay. If you believe you have information that will help the police locate Latrice, you are urged to contact the Coahoma County Sheriff at 662-624-3085 or your local authorities. Please share this story about Latrice Armstead to continue the discussion about domestic violence and the mystery surrounding her missing person case. She is our sister and her life matters.
Number 2.
The family of Lisa Knight has been looking for answers about her disappearance in Alpena County since June 2012. The case is now being investigated as a homicide. Lisa Knight loved just about everything that came with life in Northeast Michigan, and the easygoing, happy-go-lucky, quintessential country girl, had big plans for her life. Plans that were tragically cut short in June of 2012. Lisa's father Mark was getting ready to head home from a trucking run when he learned someone received a disturbing phone call from Lisa and hadn't heard back from her. At that point in her life she had been into some drugs and into partying, and you hope she was just hungover someplace. She's going to show up in a couple of days. I had that gut feeling that wasn't the case, said Mark. Several more days passed and there was still no sign of Lisa. That's when state police got involved and determined Lisa was last seen at the home of her ex-husband Lloyd Free in Asiniki, just south of Alpena. We determined that she was with Lloyd at his house on June 8, and according to Lloyd, he was at his house when he went to bed, and when he woke up the next morning she was gone. Through further investigation we haven't been able to determine she was with anyone else other than Lloyd after that time. We've done numerous searches at Lloyd's house, on Lloyd's property involving the MSP crime lab, cadaver dogs, search parties, we've bored holes in concrete on the property, and we've found no signs of Lisa to this date, said D. Sergeant Matthew Wilt. And that is what is perhaps most frustrating for detectives. Obviously Lloyd is a person of interest in the investigation. Having said that, Lloyd's been largely cooperative with us throughout the investigation, so we're still looking for answers. My belief is that someone that we've previously talked to has information that could help us solve this case, said Wilt. But even more frustrating and agonizing has been the nearly decade-long wait for answers Lisa's family has endured. It is the absolute worst part of the whole situation because there's no finality to it, there's no end, there's not a point where you put it behind you and move on. I would like to say that justice would simply being arrested and tried and having their day in court. As a Christian, justice will be when this person meets their end and has to face God and answer to this. To me personally, this won't come to an end until somebody rots in prison, said Mark. Detectives say they've received more than 170 tips in the case, but are still looking for the final pieces of information to answer the question of what happened to Lisa. I think at this point in time if someone has information it's time to quit being afraid. The people responsible, everyone has aged, everyone has had their life trials and issues. If somebody, whoever has information, I know there's people out there who have information about this who haven't come forward. There will come a time when they'll answer for not coming forward, because if they take this secret to their grave, God will judge them for it, said Mark. If you have any information on what happened to Lisa Knight, you're asked to call state police in Alpena at 989-354-4101. You can also submit anonymous tips to Crime Stoppers at 1-800-422-5245. They're offering a reward of up to $1,000 for information that helps solve this case.
Number 3.
Morgan was last seen sitting in an armchair just outside the front door of her residence in the 2800 block of 17th Avenue South in St. Petersburg, Florida at 12:20 a.m. on July 25, 2012. She was talking to 24-year-old Jacoby Rashad Flowers, whom she claimed was the father of her unborn child. She said she planned to give him the results of the ultrasound. One witness saw a white car parked in the house's driveway, but didn't see Morgan approach the vehicle. She apparently never came back inside and has never been heard from again. She left behind her purse, the sonogram picture of the baby and other belongings. Only her phone disappeared with her. Police characterized Morgan's disappearance as ominous due to her pregnancy, the fact she left everything behind, and the fact that it's completely out of character for her to leave without warning. She routinely called her mother several times a day. She did run away once when she was 15, went to a friend's house, and called a relative from there. She was back home within a day. Morgan normally spoke to her mother every day. She was also a prolific user of social media, All the activity on her accounts stopped after her disappearance. She had a job at a Checkers restaurant, and she left behind her paycheck. She was reportedly excited about her pregnancy and upcoming motherhood, and her family had accepted the situation. In June 2016, almost 4 years after Morgan's disappearance, Flowers was indicted for first murder in her case. He was already in custody on unrelated charges of fleeing and eluding a law enforcement officer at the time of the indictment and was due to be released on July 1. A photo of Flowers is posted with this case summary. He had told police he knew Morgan, but said he hadn't seen her for months before her disappearance. He denied that he was her unborn baby's father or that they had ever had sex. He said online messages between them discussing her pregnancy were only playing make-believe. Investigators stated Flowers didn't want Morgan to have the baby because he was already supporting 3 children, and she threatened to report him for statutory rape unless he admitted paternity and paid child support for her daughter. They also said Flowers' alibi for the night of Morgan's disappearance had numerous inconsistencies. Flowers is awaiting trial for the homicide. Morgan's body has never been found, but foul play is suspected due to the circumstances involved.
Number 4.
It's been 8 years since Natanalie Perez disappeared in Miami, and her family wants her to know they love and miss her every single day. That big smile, how she was always the first to text them back, the way she valued her family, her church and her Bible above all else. They were thrilled when she graduated from high school in Sebring, Florida, and moved to the big city to chase her dreams. Natty is a talented singer, and her girlfriend got the 19-year-old excited about the amazing opportunities there. But Natty wasn't in Miami long before she became ensnared in a violent sex trafficking ring that catered to wealthy men in fancy hotels, and her family was powerless to help her. Now, 8 years later, her family is pleading with those who profess to be her friends to tell them what happened to her. "No matter what, we're here and we're family, and we're not going to give up on her," says her younger sister, Mary Lee Villanueva, who has since had 4 children. "We just want her home. I'm willing to face whatever with her. I'm not scared. So, I don't want her to feel scared." Villanueva learned her sister was missing on June 1, 2012, when her sister's boyfriend in Miami called her. "What do you mean she's missing?" Villanueva said. The boyfriend said they'd had a fight the night before, he woke up, and she was gone. Her family kept calling her cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. In the months before they learned she was missing, her family was sensing trouble. Natty's cousins, who also lived in Miami, told their mom that Natty was seen around town with the wrong crowd, people who scared them. Natty all but vanished from social media, which she loved, and rarely texted or called home anymore. When she did, she assured her family she was okay, but didn't sound like herself. Her answers were short, like someone was listening. Her aunt, Maria Middle, was frantic to help her niece, who was like a daughter. Police said they couldn't do anything because she was an adult, so Middle could only hope that Natty would call her family if she needed help. It wasn't long before she did, and Middle asked her sons to bring her back home. When her cousins found her, her nails were flipped back with blood in her hands, and her hair was ripped from the top of her head, her aunt says. Her niece was traumatized, and Middle took her aside and gently coaxed her to talk. Natty said she was being forced to do things she didn't want to do, that she was being videotaped. She was just so scared, she said of her niece, who was shaking and would not go to the police. She said, "I mean, you know, there's so many people involved, people, you know, judges, attorneys, people with a lot of money. I don't want to put anybody in danger." Natty described a world of high rollers where we dress like rich girls and were sold for sex to powerful men with millions of dollars and expensive cars. She was drugged and beaten to comply, not given food. She mentioned Backpage, a website where clients could see her photos and buy her for sex with a credit card. Then Natty told her aunt about all the other girls caught up in the sex trafficking ring, some from other countries, others from small towns, just like hers. During her short visit home, Natty stayed with her mother, Ana Gutierrez, in Sebring. Looking back, her mother remembers how her daughter was on the phone every night, all night. Her sister had shielded her from the truth, but now that she knows, she believes Natty's pimp was keeping tabs on her. Before she knew it, Natty was on her way back to Miami. Middle pleaded with her niece to stay and regrets to this day that she didn't somehow restrain her. "Don't you know what they're doing to you?" she said. "They touch my body," Natty said. "But they can't touch my soul." It was the last time they saw Natty. After Natty was reported missing to police, the family, led by Middle, took to the streets of Miami to find her. They got dressed up and went to glitzy nightclubs they would never dream of going in, asking if anyone had seen her. They looked for clues on her Facebook page. They worked with the Anti-Predator Project. They hired a private detective. They began working with us at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Middle met with a Miami detective who told her the best thing that could happen would be if Natty was arrested for prostitution. She was incredulous. Her niece was a victim, and this sex trafficking ring was destroying many young lives. "Either someone has her, or they did something to my kid," said her mother. "But, I mean, if people don't talk, this is going to be a never-ending story. There's people out there, right in my town. They know what's going on, because they took my daughter to Miami and they knew exactly what they were doing when they took her." Middle takes solace in the fact that other girls from Natty's hometown are safe today because they saw how her trusting niece was so easily swept up into a dangerous situation. Middle has devoted her life to social work and helping others since she couldn't help her niece. Now, all Natty's family can do is hope someone will step forward. Her grandmother, Maria Perez, says she knows there must be kindness in the hearts of those who know what happened, and she appealed to them to help bring Natty back. "Every day is like a dying day until we see her," she said.
Number 5.
On August 7, 2012, Donna Wells Davis received a call from her granddaughter, 6-year-old Nevi, that no mother ever wants to receive. Nevi told her grandmother that her mother, Tamala Wells, had not returned home since leaving the previous night. Surprised that Nevi was calling to inform her of her mother's disappearance instead of Tamala's boyfriend and Nevi's father, Ricky Tennant, Donna tried desperately to get Ricky on the phone, but he refused to do so. Finding Ricky's behavior odd and worried that something happened to Tamala, Donna immediately left her Florida home to go to Tamala and Ricky's home on Appleton Street in Detroit, Michigan. Upon reaching Detroit, she searched the area for clues and filed a missing persons report with the Detroit Police Department. Donna recalled the officers simply sitting there with their hands on the back of their head, commenting they never even wrote down her name. When questioned about their lack of responsiveness in a 2015 news article, the department refused to comment, citing the ongoing investigation. According to Ricky, Tamala left home on August 6 around 9:30 p.m., saying she was going to take care of business. Shortly before her disappearance, she also told Ricky that she was going to pay him back. Ricky contends he did not understand Tamala's statement and left shortly afterwards to pick up Nevi from nearby friend's home. On the way back home with Nevi, Ricky claims he saw Tamala drive by him in her white Pontiac Grand Prix, and that was the last time he ever saw her again. It is unclear whether Ricky ever reported Tamala as missing, but he did report her vehicle as missing. A few days later, Ricky claimed his friend saw Tamala's car abandoned and parked in Coventry between Emory and Lance, which is about 15 miles away from Tamala and Ricky's home. Ricky went to the vehicle and found his jack and basketball missing from the trunk. Upon seeing the items missing, he called the police as he didn't want to mess with the car. However, detectives stated that Ricky searched the vehicle thoroughly to the point that no evidence could be found, which Sergeant Marcellus Ball of the Detroit Police Department described as odd and disturbing. Ricky has continuously denied any involvement in Tamala's disappearance, but does not mince words in a 2015 news article, where he stated Nevi gives him a headache, and Tamala used to give me a headache, but I dealt with it, and I'm looking at it right now, as one headache is better than two headaches. Donna believes Ricky knows more than he is letting on. Ricky counters, saying he hates Donna with a passion for making him look like a villain. Despite police stating he is not considered a suspect, Ricky feels police continue to harass him since he failed a detector test. Ricky attributes the failure to his smoking marijuana and his lawyer's assertion that authorities can ask questions a certain way which can make one fail the test. Ricky further elaborates, "If I did something, I think I would be in jail by now." Sergeant Ball described how Ricky actually took 2 tests and failed both. He was so agitated while taking the test that authorities worried he was going to hurt the polygraph examiner. Sergeant Ball further highlights Ricky's behavior as not being representative of someone who is innocent. A 2015 news article stated there have been no new developments in the case, and there are no suspects or persons of interest. Sergeant Ball provides more insight, saying the investigation is ongoing, and just because you believe something to be true, you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and right now we can't do that. Interviewed again in 2019 for a news article, Ricky discussed how he loves Tamala, but complained she would not come home many nights and would leave home every day. Ricky continues to maintain his innocence and has custody of Nevi, who is now 14 years old. Donna continues to make regular trips to Detroit to search for her daughter. She describes Tamala as a social butterfly who worked in the home healthcare field after graduating from nursing school. Tamala also has a son who is now 24 years old. Tamala remains missing. She has a scar under her chin and a scar on the left side of her forehead. If you have any information, please contact the Detroit Police Department at 313-596-5640.
Number 6.
Ashley Morris Mullis of Muncie, Royerton area, Indiana, was a 27-year-old mother of 3 who devoted her life and love to her children. Friends described her as the most beautiful person in the world. Ashley was well-loved and kind, caring, and compassionate to those she cared about. An honest, dedicated woman, Ashley was a human being worth having around, as she left nothing but happiness wherever she went. Ashley attended a family reunion on September 22, 2013. Despite having birthed her 3rd child 2 weeks prior, her priorities clearly sat firmly with her family, and nothing seemed amiss on that comfortably cool day of celebration. No one knew it would be the last time anyone would see her. Ashley left the reunion, and after a few days of her father and other family members unable to make contact, her home was visited and a note left on the door to contact someone upon receiving the note. When a call didn't come, her parents returned to her home a few days later to find their note had vanished, and the house remained empty. A second note was left, only to go missing the same as the first. The search continues to this day. In 2012, Ashley, legally separated from her husband at this point, had troubles arise with the transmission of her vehicle. She sought mechanical assistance through North American Discount Muffler and Brake, owned by a man named Daniel York Sr. She became friendly with Mr. York, who was married and approximately twice Ashley's age. The two formed a closer bond, and within months Ashley was provided a vehicle and a rental home to live in, both provided by York. After the car and home were gifted, Ashley became pregnant with a child who belonged to the man who seemed to love her despite being married. When Ashley gave birth to the child, Don Morris, Ashley's father, shared that Mr. York did not allow Ashley's parents at the hospital to visit her and their granddaughter. This, I feel, was an early red flag for future issues. Time passed until September of 2013 arrived when everything changed for the Morris family. After both notes requesting contact went missing, a frustrated Don contacted Mr. York to question his knowledge regarding the whereabouts of Ashley. York responded by explaining that he had given Ashley $15,000 to move to Virginia. Allegedly, it was Ashley's decision to leave Indiana. Don found this suspicious, as he knew his daughter would never leave her children behind, no matter what life decision she made. Even if she had no reason not to answer her phone or reassure her parents that she was okay. It was at this point that Ashley's parents chose to approach the police with a missing persons case. Unfortunately, it was discovered that the sheriff involved in the case was allegedly related to York, and that wasn't the worst discovery. York was also a person of interest in a homicide case that occurred 4 years before Ashley went missing. In September of 2015, after having moved to Florida, Daniel York Sr. passed away and took whatever knowledge he had with him. With Ashley missing and her youngest child's father deceased, Mrs. York was able to utilize proper loopholes to adopt her late husband's young child. Not only did the Morris family lose their daughter, their granddaughter's custody is in the hands of Mrs. York. Pouring salt on an open wound compares little to the pain this family suffers with this situation. Though multiple lawyers have been obtained for the fight, there is no light at the end of the tunnel that will bring Ashley's daughter back to the Morris family. The ex-husband? Not much has been reported or known regarding his potential involvement, but I'm inclined to believe he had nothing to do with Ashley's disappearance. Ashley had been using a car and house from York, and I can't imagine a former spouse taking such an interest in Ashley's love life that he would remove the mother of his children. It's possible, but not probable, in my opinion. Daniel York Sr. I think the information provided makes it clear that his involvement was far beyond providing money to move. The motive is there. An affair, a child born from it, taking care of her, upsetting his wife in all of these revelations, and so on. 7 years after Crystal Dupuis Grebinger was last seen outside the Faith House domestic violence crisis shelter, movement is being made in her case. Her estranged husband, Sean Grebinger, 48, was taken into custody in the southeastern Brazilian city of Pouso Alegre and arrested on an Interpol warrant as an international fugitive wanted in the suspected murder of Crystal, according to a statement from Brazil's federal police. The federal police statement said American law enforcement obtained substantial evidence of Sean Grebinger's involvement in his wife's disappearance and potential homicide. Grebinger moved to the country shortly after Crystal's disappearance and eventually remarried a Brazilian woman and obtained a residence permit. In an attempt to obtain refuge, he falsely claimed to have been an agent of the American Special Forces of Counterterrorism, in addition to simulating political persecution in the USA, a translation of the Brazilian Federal Police statement said. Grebinger is accused of domestic violence against his Brazilian wife on January 31, the statement said. He's being held at the Pouso Alegre prison awaiting extradition to the United States. Lafayette Police Department spokesperson Corporal Brigitte Dugas said the agency is involved in the case, but declined to provide specifics about the status of the investigation or potential discoveries. We are investigating the case, however, the district attorney's office is working with international agencies pertaining to the case. Until all those aspects pertaining to the case are worked out, we are not interviewing or answering any questions about our role in the investigation, Dugas said. A statement from 15th Judicial District Attorney Keith Stutz Thursday echoed the police department's comments. The investigation has been and continues to be an active, ongoing criminal investigation involving several law enforcement agencies. In order not to compromise this continuing, Ongoing criminal investigation. The district attorney's office and the investigating agencies involved cannot provide further information and comment at this time, he said. Grebinger's relationships with Crystal was volatile and marked by repeated abuse over the course of their nearly 16-year marriage, according to court filings. Crystal had filed for divorce from Grebinger and had an active restraining order against him at the time of her disappearance on February 8, 2013. Her first protective order petition in Lafayette Parish was filed in May 1997, roughly a month after the couple was married on April 5, 1997. Crystal, 16 at the time, said that her new husband beat her on 4 occasions, beginning on the couple's wedding night, and sexually assaulted her at least once. The pair then both filed for divorce. In a May 1999 petition linked to the divorce filing, Crystal stated, petitioner was 4.5 months pregnant when defendant beat her up in the presence of a friend of hers who witnessed the incident, and he ripped the phone off of the wall to where she could not call her father for help. Other court documents said he threw her to the ground and punched her in the head, causing her to black out. Witnesses said he kicked her in the stomach and in the face, the documents said. At some point, the divorce petitions and petition for protective order were dropped. In March 2012, Crystal filed for a protective order in Lafayette again. She and her family lived in St. Martin Parish in the Breaux Bridge area, but Crystal had fled her home to Lafayette and filed the request from a confidential address. She wrote that Grebinger had stabbed her in the nose with a knife, punched her repeatedly in the face after their 4 children left for school, sexually assaulted her, and threatened to kill her. She also said, while punching her in the face on one occasion, she attempted to grab a child's belt from the floor to defend herself and he strangled her with it. I had no more fight, no trying to get away. I laid there until finally he got off, she wrote. In the past he has beaten me on different occasions in the head, punching, kicking me, he's thrown knives at me, and violated a restraining order in St. Martin Parish. I am afraid desperately for my life and my 4 babies, she wrote. Officials at Cecilia Primary School and Cecilia Junior High were subpoenaed to testify in the case. In a later filing, Crystal wrote that Grebinger was angered by the school's involvement in their personal lives. She said he called police on teachers, claiming they abused his children, and he was removed from the junior high campus by police at least once.
Number 7.
He's told my children to curse out school staff and said numerous times that they were going to pay, she wrote. In a court-approved consent agreement and protective order issued in March 2012, Crystal was granted temporary custody of the couple's 4 children and use of the family's home in Breaux Bridge, as well as a family vehicle. Grebinger was ordered to stay away from the family and granted limited supervised visitation on weekends. In a May 2012 filing, Crystal wrote that Grebinger was disregarding the order and came and went from the house as he pleased, harassed her frequently about her whereabouts, attempted to control her movements and refused to follow the court's guidelines for child visitation, among other things. Court filings show there was a back and forth between the couple. In May 2012, Crystal sought to dissolve her protective order without providing explanation on the documents. In November 2012, she again sought court-mandated protection, stating her husband had choked her, targeted her violently after nights of failed gambling, and had threatened to kill her. In December 2012, she sought to dissolve the order. We have reconciled. We have been married for 16 years, and like all marriages we have had problems. We still have one another, and at this time we want to stay together, Crystal wrote. We have 4 children that need both parents. The dissolution request had not been granted when Grebinger violated the order by visiting Crystal in the hospital in early January. Grebinger was arrested for the breach. He then used Crystal's dissolution filing to challenge his protection order violation, going as far as filing scanned family vacation photos taken during a period of reconciliation in late 2012 to support his claim that the charges were misplaced, according to court documents. In mid-January, Crystal filed for divorce in Lafayette Parish and requested the court shorten the mandated period of separation prior to divorce from 1 year to 6 months because of the active protection order. In the filing, she said the couple had been living apart since early November 2012. Less than a month later, Crystal disappeared. She was last seen outside the Faith House crisis shelter in Lafayette. Her body was never found,